let's talk something that you guys both love dearly, and that is SEC football. Uh, let's talk SEC football. One of my hot takes, probably the first hot take that I wrote down. This is going to shock some people, and it's going to make some people mad, and I'm okay with it. But it is my belief that SEC fans, they don't actually love the game of football. They just love the SEC. The amount of people that I saw online before that Ohio State Notre Dame game talking about, like you said earlier, they were disinterested. They're not even going to watch the game. Like, I can't fathom. Like, I told Lance, if New Mexico State was playing Hawaii in the national championship, I'd be there watching it, right, in my basement. And I just can't fathom the fact that an SEC fan who just, you look at SEC football and it is the purest of the sport, right? I mean, throughout the years, it's unbelievable. And just because there's no SEC team playing in it, I just can't imagine not watching it. And like you said, I think there were probably fewer than I'm representing, people that were saying that, but they were clearly the loudest to me.
Go ahead.
It's a good point. I honestly can't really push back on it because it's something that growing up in the SEC footprint, what now is the SEC footprint, you become very aware that the loudest fans are oftentimes the least in tune with the game, right? We all love our teams, right? Lance, you love the Tide to a fault. I love the Aggies to a fault. But what makes us different from just the average college freshman, the average 15-year grad, is when our teams are in the toilet, which for me, it's been a little bit more often than yours. I'm still going to tune in. I'm still going to watch, and I'm still going to pay attention to the larger narrative because I love college football. My identity as a football fan is not solely tied to my team's outcome, to where if my team is not playing well, the rest of the sport's dead to me. Does it make the rest of the Saturday really painful? Sure does. Absolutely does. The day that I got engaged, A&M lost in a super painful way to Ole Miss, right? I joke about the engagement being my relief from the pain that Jimbo Fisher brought me. So I experience this on a very real level. But Tyler, to your original point, because the SEC has experienced so much success, you have gotten and our massive schools with huge enrollments. When they're succeeding as a conference, you're going to have that crowd oftentimes be the loudest because we all want to be a part of a winner, right? If you go to Kentucky, you're still going to chant SEC when Alabama beats Ohio State or Notre Dame, because it makes you feel like you are in the best conference. That even though you went 5-7, well, but anybody else could go 5-7 in this conference because it's really difficult. And when that facade starts to fade away, suddenly there's not much to lean on, right? And I think you have a lot of those casuals and a lot of those fans in the margins suddenly start to go, you know what? It is a beautiful night out tonight. I'm going to go out with the wife and do something else.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Tyler. I actually agree with what you're saying there, and I can't believe that I'm admitting that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's like necessarily obviously represents all of them by any means, but like it does probably represent a lot, because like I know that this year more than ever, you had a lot of fans that were obviously riding the SEC pretty hard during the playoff time, and I mean, a lot of people, even to us in our comments and on our YouTube channel and on some of our posts, were saying that, and you've even said this, that kind of like what Mitch just alluded to, that what drives people outside of the SEC crazy is the feeling of conference superiority when you're 4-8 Mississippi State or 5-7, like you said, Kentucky, and poking your chest out chanting SEC when Georgia and Alabama are the ones carrying the water for everybody. Like that's what drives people outside the SEC crazy. But to Mitch's point, I mean, it's literally a religion down there in the Deep South for college football. It's just it really is. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, man. I definitely have a lot of friends that could care less about football being played outside of the Southeastern footprint. outside of the SEC footprint. And to Mitch's point, like, we care about it a ton, but it definitely is. It's a sense of pride deal that is absolutely, positively unmatched. It just is.
Tyler, let me turn it around back to you if I can. Up in the Midwest, rooting for Notre Dame and obviously having a number of successful schools up there, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, etc. What is the fan base like on an average year up there? Where, I married into an Iowa family. They love their Hawks, but they know that a national championship or that elite level is probably not within reach. But they still like college football. So what is your experience with a non-SEC crowd?
Yeah, I think for me personally, growing up as a Notre Dame fan, I've never been affiliated with a conference at all.
Sure, that's fair.
And that's one of the things that drives me absolutely insane is like, my conference is better than your conference. Like, I've told Lance that for as long as I know him. Like, I don't understand that. It goes beyond the Mississippi States and the Kentuckys, puffing out their chests. It's just like, who cares? And the conferences are so big these days and so spread out. It's like, who cares if Washington is better than Ole Miss or whatever? It's like you're not even playing the same sport in the same conferences sometimes. Like Texas playing the same schedule as Florida in the SEC, not happening. So growing up as a independent fan, right? It's just that mindset was never my mindset. Now I've got a lot of friends here who are Purdue football fans, Indiana football fans. Here in, even my neighborhood, I got some Ohio State fans and stuff. And I don't know if maybe because it gets colder up here sooner and we got to stay inside more and watch more football. Maybe they just do watch more football. And down in the South, like you said, like, I don't care about any of the games. I'm going to go out to dinner. I'm going to go out with some friends or whatever. But I think that you got your Michigans, your Ohio States, your Penn States. And when you're good, your Wisconsins, like I think that they do. I can't really speak, on their behalf, but I just think it's for me personally, it's a different mindset with the whole conference thing. And I guess I just grew up, loving college football as a whole and watching it as much as I could. And obviously now, being older and married and 2 kids, like my wife is gracious enough that she lets me watch as much college football as I can right now. So it's going to sound like I'm with this next one, like I'm banging on the SEC, and this is my last one really, but I really wish your boy Trey was here because I agree with him on his thoughts on Greg Sankey being the most overrated commissioner in college football. You guys are talking about, you can refresh everybody's memory, and if you haven't listened, go listen, but they're talking about Tony Petitti and how Kevin Warren leaving the Big Ten might have been the best thing to ever happen to the Big Ten. And Tony Petitti coming in and, kind of pseudo battling, Greg Sankey. And obviously this season with them getting only 3 teams in and then the bowl performances, like it did no favors for Greg Sankey. And I think in my opinion, you got a couple more seasons like that for out of the SEC, a lot of his supposed power that he has over the game of college football is going to wash away a little bit. He'll still have that ESPN, ABC contract and everything, and all the ratings. But I just think like the so-called dominance of the SEC, right? I mean, his dominance as it's seen as the commissioner of the SEC is kind of fading away too.
Yeah, I think where Greg Sankey probably made a misstep was when he added Texas and Oklahoma to the conference. He assumed that he had all the Infinity Stones at that point, right? Who knows what the actual conversations were about adding Notre Dame, adding Florida State, Clemson, Miami, what have you. I wasn't in the room for those. Who knows if he was actually serious about getting those deals over the line. But when Texas and Oklahoma came in, I think he actually looked at the rest of the landscape of college athletics, not just football, which he's the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. It's his job to look at all the sports. But when we know that football drives the revenue, he had a chance to step on the throats of every other conference and say, the SEC is going to be the most dominant conference for as long as we have this current model, right? And he missed that opportunity. And so as the Big Ten has now added Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA, and continues to stoke those fires that they might be open to adding another school or another two schools. For me, you add in now this year where it felt like the conference as a whole performed down a rung. And suddenly the big bad SEC is not impenetrable. They're mortal. And so I don't necessarily know that the SEC is going to slip and see their performance reduced drastically over the next couple of years. Although I do have my concerns about a program like Georgia. I don't know that Georgia is just as ironclad a championship contender every single year as maybe we've thought. And that's a whole separate can of worms. But Sankey, it felt like maybe rested on his laurels just a little bit. And he's also played favorites behind the scenes. Texas got a much more preferential treatment to even to Oklahoma. And that has made a lot of folks in the conference outside of just College Station rather unpleased with him. So all of that goes hand in hand with the performance suffering just a little bit, maybe of Georgia and Alabama and Texas and Oklahoma were the Final Four teams. We're not having this discussion, and Greg Sankey's a dang genius. But it does feel like maybe folks are starting to go, you know what? Maybe you're not as great as we thought.
So let's just keep going here with little hot takes here. We're talking about the SEC, talking about Greg Sankey. Tyler, I'm going to shock the world here with this one. I still believe the SEC is the best conference in college football. And even though there seems to be a lot of people that don't believe that, I just don't think that 1 year of, I know Michigan won the national championship last year. I'm fully aware of that. But I'm just, obviously overall this postseason and this playoff deal, I am of the belief that you should not, judge conferences and decide who gets conference superiority because of bowl games, especially now. When there's so many players not playing in these games and coaches are moving between different programs or leaving, getting fired, etc. But still a lot of people do use that as a barometer to try to decide who the best conferences are. But I just think that after 1 year where, to Mitch's point, obviously the SEC definitely showed a lot of cracks in the armor this year. Definitely did not seem to be as, not to say they just weren't. They weren't as dominant as they normally are. The talent, because of the transfer portal and NIL, and seems to be more dispersed across college football, no doubt. But I still think that as of right now, today, as we sit here and record this episode right now, that the SEC still is the best conference in college football, and it takes more than just this one postseason to trump that and to make that not be the case.
Just a scorching hot take there from Lance Spartan. No, I'm with you. I mean, you on the surface, yeah, talent, probably the depth of the conference too. I mean, coaching, it's all there. And yeah, you're right. I mean, 1-2 years, it doesn't really make a dent into what they've accomplished over the past couple of decades. So I'm with you, Mitch. You still think the SEC is the most dominant conference in college football?
I do. I think the margin has gotten tighter, though, right? I mean, we live in a society that is totally predicated on what have you done for me now, right? Their sole information source is 60-second TikToks. But if we're going to forget all of these SEC championships and national championships over the last decade plus, and just distill it down to 1 year, I still think, like Lance is saying, the SEC in general, top to bottom, still stacks up really well. Now, you have maybe some recruiting cycles that start to miss, right? Georgia can't fix the offensive line. A couple quarterbacks. I mean, the quarterback play in the conference this year was terrible. So you keep having that, and maybe now we're starting to have a conversation about the Big Ten drawing level or even threatening to surpass the SEC as a whole.